Pull it down, gasped the trembling black woman as she collapsed in the Missouri desert, and the giant cowboy who found her dying gently ripped away her suffocating white dress and kissed her forehead with unexpected tenderness. The townspeople see her only as the preacher's obedient property, a silent shadow meant for servitude and suffering until death. They assume she'll be dragged back to face divine punishment for her desperate flight. But the mountain man who saves her carries his own war wounds and a hidden gentleness that awakens something dangerous in both their hearts. She possesses secrets sewn into that white dress that could topple the most powerful man in the territory, while he holds skills that could keep them both alive long enough to use them. The preacher's men are already riding, and the woman's feverish whispers about evidence suggest the stakes are far deadlier than a simple runaway wife. Will two broken souls find the courage to fight an empire, or will they burn together in the desert sun? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. Lucy Blake knelt on the wooden church floor for the third time that evening. Her knees ached against the rough planks. The congregation watched in silence as preacher Ezekiel Thorne towered above her. "Forgiveness comes through humility," Thorne declared. His voice echoed off the chapel walls. "My wife forgot to sweep the church steps this morning." Lucy's face burned with shame. She had swept those steps twice. Thorne knew it. The congregation knew it. Nobody would speak. "Beg forgiveness from the Lord," Thorne commanded. "I ask forgiveness for my failing," Lucy whispered. The white dress choked her throat. Its high collar pressed against her windpipe like a noose. Thorne had chosen this dress specifically. It covered every inch of her skin except her hands and face. After the service, families filed out quickly. They avoided looking at Lucy. She remained kneeling until the last person left. Thorne approached her slowly. His boots clicked against the floor. "Tonight we discuss your attitude," he said quietly. "Your pride needs correction." Lucy's stomach twisted. She knew what his corrections involved. The last one had left bruises that still hadn't faded. "Yes, husband," she managed. "Go home. Prepare supper. We'll talk after." Lucy stood on shaking legs. The dress restricted her movement. She could barely lift her arms above her waist. Every step felt like walking in chains. At the small house behind the church, Lucy prepared beans and cornbread. Her hands moved automatically while her mind raced. 2 years of marriage had taught her Thorne's patterns. Tonight would be worse than usual. She thought of her father. Before his death, Samuel Blake had been the town's only colored schoolteacher. He had taught Lucy to read before she could walk properly. Mathematics came as naturally as breathing. "Education is freedom," he used to say. Now Lucy pretended she couldn't read her own name. Thorne believed educated women were an abomination. He never suspected his illiterate wife had been copying his correspondence for months. The evidence was sewn into her dress lining: bank records, forged deeds, letters detailing his theft from church funds. Lucy had documented everything with her father's careful precision. Thorne entered the kitchen as she set his plate down. "Sit," he ordered. Lucy perched on the edge of her chair, the dress pulled tight across her shoulders. "Mrs. Henderson mentioned you spoke to her daughter today." Lucy's heart hammered. She had asked Sarah Henderson about her reading lessons. Nothing more. "I only said good evening. You encourage the girls' schooling. Education makes women rebellious." "I meant no harm." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "You're developing ideas above your station." He stood and walked behind her chair. His hand rested on her shoulder. "Perhaps you need reminding of your place." Terror flooded Lucy's body. She thought of the hidden papers pressed against her ribs. All that evidence would die with her if she stayed. "I'll be more careful," she whispered. "Yes, you will." Thorne squeezed her shoulder hard enough to leave marks. Lucy bit her lip to keep from crying out. "Clean the kitchen, then come to our room. We'll pray together about your pride." Lucy knew his prayers involved leather straps and locked doors. She nodded silently. Thorne left for his evening walk around town. He always took the same route, always spent exactly 30 minutes asserting his authority over anyone still outside. Lucy counted to 60. Then she moved. She grabbed her father's worn Bible from its hiding place, the only possession Thorne allowed her to keep. Inside the cover, she had written the locations of 3 witness families, people who might testify if she ever found courage to speak. The kitchen window faced the desert. Lucy had oiled its hinges weeks ago during her regular cleaning. It opened silently. The white dress caught on the window frame. Lucy pulled harder. The fabric tore, but she squeezed through. Her bare feet hit the rocky ground. Pain shot up her legs, but she ran anyway. The dress tangled around her ankles with every step. Behind her, the church bell tower loomed against the darkening sky. Thorne would return soon. When he found her gone, his rage would be terrible. Lucy stumbled across the desert floor. Cactus spines pierced her feet. The restrictive dress made breathing nearly impossible. Sweat soaked the heavy fabric. She thought of Sarah Henderson asking about reading lessons, of other young girls who might avoid Lucy's fate if Thorne's crimes became known, of her father's voice saying education was freedom. The papers rustled against her chest with each labored breath. Hours passed. Lucy's strength faded. Dehydration made her dizzy. The white dress had become a furnace, trapping her body heat. Something rattled in the rocks ahead. Lucy tried to change direction, but her legs gave out. Fire shot up her ankle as fangs pierced her skin. The rattlesnake slithered away into darkness. Lucy crawled a few more yards before collapsing completely. Her vision blurred. The stars wheeled overhead. Lucy pressed her hand against the dress pocket containing her father's Bible and Thorne's stolen secrets. "Pull it down," she whispered to the empty desert. The dress, the church, Thorne's entire corrupt empire. Everything went black. Dawn light filtered through canyon walls when Lucy felt strong hands lift her from the rocks. Through her fever, she saw a bearded face marked by old scars. Kind eyes studied her with concern. The mountain man carried her toward shadows and safety. Lucy's hand still clutched the evidence that could destroy the most powerful man in Missouri. Silas Mayweather had lived alone in the canyon for 3 years. The war had carved deep lines into his face and deeper scars into his soul. He preferred the company of rocks and silence to the chaos of civilization. The woman in his arms weighed almost nothing. Her dark skin burned with fever. The white dress clung to her like a shroud. His cabin sat hidden behind a wall of red stone. Water trickled from a natural spring. Shelves lined the walls, packed with books salvaged from his old life. Before the war, he had been a clerk. Numbers and legal documents made more sense than bullets and blood. Silas laid Lucy on his narrow bed. The snakebite on her ankle had swollen badly. He had treated similar wounds during the war. She might live if the fever broke. He cut away the fabric around the bite. The woman stirred and mumbled something about papers. Delirium, most likely. People said strange things when death prowled nearby. For 2 days, Lucy drifted between consciousness and dreams. Silas fed her water drop by drop. He applied cold cloths to her burning forehead. The fever finally broke on the 3rd morning. Lucy opened her eyes to find a stranger watching her with concern. Sunlight streamed through a single window. Books surrounded her on every surface. "You can read," she whispered. Her throat felt like sandpaper. Silas nodded. "Some. You need water." He helped her drink from a tin cup. The liquid tasted better than anything she remembered. "The preacher will come looking," Lucy said. "Figured as much. That dress marks you as somebody's property." Lucy tried to sit up. The movement sent fire through her ankle. More importantly, the dress had shifted. She could feel the hidden papers crinkle against her ribs. "I need to get out of this dress," she said. Silas looked away respectfully. "I can find you something else to wear." "No, you need to help me. There's something sewn inside." Silas studied her face. Lucy met his gaze steadily. Whatever fever dreams had plagued her were gone now. Her eyes held intelligence and desperation in equal measure. "Pull it down," Lucy said, struggling with the high collar. "Please, it's important." Silas hesitated. Then he retrieved a sharp knife from his kitchen shelf. "Hold still." He cut through the collar first. Lucy gasped as cool air touched her throat. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. More, she urged. Silas worked carefully down the dress seams. The fabric fell away in pieces. Lucy wore a simple cotton slip underneath, modest and practical. There, she pointed to the dress lining. Feel along the seams. Silas ran his fingers over the torn fabric. Hidden pockets had been sewn throughout the lining with careful stitches. Papers crinkled beneath his touch. What is this? Lucy smiled for the first time since her escape. Evidence. She pulled folded documents from a dozen hidden compartments. Bank statements, property deeds, letters written in a flowing script. The papers covered Silas's small table in neat stacks. My husband thinks I can't read, Lucy explained. For 2 years I've been copying his correspondence, recording his meetings, documenting every theft. Silas picked up a bank statement. The numbers told a clear story. Thousands of dollars had been transferred from church accounts to private holdings. Forged signatures authorized fraudulent land sales. Ezekiel Thorne, Silas read from a letterheader. You know him? Everyone knows the preacher's reputation. Half the territory sends him donations. Lucy pulled out a leather journal. Her own careful handwriting filled every page. He's been stealing from churches across 3 states, taking land from families who can't read the deeds. My father taught me numbers before he died. I kept track of everything. Silas stared at the documents spread before him. During the war, he had processed similar paperwork for army supply chains. He understood legal language and financial records. This could destroy him, Silas said quietly. That's the idea. Why didn't you take this to the law? Lucy's expression hardened. Which law? The sheriff who takes bribes from Thorne? The judge who owes his position to church donations? The marshal who believes wives are property? Silas nodded slowly. He had seen enough corruption during the war to understand her point. So you ran instead. I was going to die anyway. At least this way, the evidence survives. She pointed to specific documents. The Henderson family lost their farm to a forged deed. The widow Mason's donation to build a school ended up in Thorne's private account. 12 families have been cheated in the last year alone. Silas studied Lucy with new respect. The trembling woman he had rescued was gone. In her place sat someone with the calculating mind of a natural accountant and the courage of a battlefield veteran. What's your plan now? I don't have one. I thought I'd be dead by morning when I ran. Silas looked at the evidence again. Names and dates filled every document. Lucy had built an airtight case against one of the most powerful men in Missouri. We need help, he said. Someone with authority who isn't in Thorne's pocket. We? Silas met her eyes. You're not doing this alone anymore. Lucy felt tears prick her eyelids. For 2 years she had carried this burden in secret. The weight of it had nearly crushed her spirit. He'll kill us both when he finds out what I took. Then we better make sure he doesn't get the chance. Silas gathered the papers into careful stacks. I know someone who might help. A woman named Fiona who runs a trading post 20 miles north. She's got no love for corrupt preachers. Lucy touched his arm. Why are you doing this? Silas looked out the window toward the desert where he had found her dying. Because someone needs to. Fiona Redfeather's trading post sat at the crossroads between 3 counties. Her mixed heritage had taught her to read people like weather patterns. She knew which travelers carried honest money and which ones brought trouble. The scarred mountain man approaching her store rode carefully. A woman sat behind him wearing clothes too large for her frame. Both moved like people expecting attack from any direction. Silas Mayweather, Fiona called from her porch. Haven't seen you in months. Fi, we need to talk. Fiona studied the woman climbing down from the horse. Recognition flickered in her eyes. That's the preacher's wife, the one on the wanted posters. Former wife, Lucy corrected, and those posters lie about everything. They usually do when Thorne's involved. Fiona's voice carried bitter knowledge. Come inside. Coffee's fresh. The trading post's interior smelled of leather and tobacco. Shelves held everything from ammunition to sewing supplies. Maps covered one wall, marking routes between settlements. Thorn cost me my land 3 years ago, Fiona said without preamble. Forged deed said my husband sold it before he died. Of course, my husband had been dead 6 months when the sale supposedly happened. Lucy pulled the leather satchel from her shoulder. Was the deed signed by James Morrison? Fiona's eyes widened. How could you know that? Because Morrison signed 47 fraudulent deeds for Thorn. I have records of every one. Lucy spread documents across Fiona's counter. Bank statements, correspondence, and her own careful notes created a paper trail of corruption spanning 3 years. Fiona examined a letter bearing Morrison's signature. This matches the deed that stole my property. Morrison works for the land office, Silas explained. Thorn pays him $50 per forged document. My God, Fiona traced the signature with her finger. Do you know what this means? It means we can get your land back, Lucy said, along with everyone else's. Fiona looked up sharply. Everyone else? Lucy opened her journal to a page marked with careful columns. The widow Patterson, the Jackson brothers, Samuel Torres and his family. 15 families total lost their property to Thorn's schemes. The Torres family comes through here sometimes, Fiona said slowly. They've been living in their wagon for 2 years. Samuel always wondered how his deed got changed after he paid the land fee. Thorn had Morrison backdate a sale to a fictitious buyer, Lucy explained. Then Thorn bought the land from his own fake company at half price. Silas studied the trading post's maps. How many of these families still live in the area? Most moved on, but a few are stubborn enough to stay nearby. They can't afford to start over somewhere else. Fiona walked to her window. The view showed the main road where travelers passed daily. I see people every week who've been cheated by that man. Families who donated to churches that never got built. Widows whose late husbands' savings disappeared into thin air. Then help us gather them, Lucy said. One person speaking against Thorn gets ignored or silenced. 20 people with documented proof becomes harder to dismiss. Thorn has the sheriff in his pocket, Fiona warned. The judge, too. Not all law enforcement, Silas said quietly. I heard talk that a federal marshal's been asking questions about church finances. Lucy felt hope stir in her chest. What kind of questions? The kind that come when someone reports suspicious banking activity across state lines. Fiona poured coffee for all 3 of them. The bitter brew steadied Lucy's nerves. We'd need more than documents, Fiona said. We'd need witnesses willing to speak publicly. That takes courage most people don't have. They'll have courage if they're not alone, Lucy replied. Fear loses power when it's shared. Over the next hour, they planned carefully. Fiona knew which families remained in the area. Silas could move through the countryside without attracting attention. Lucy's documents provided proof for every claim. The Morrison connection is key, Fiona said. If we can get him to confess, the whole scheme unravels. Morrison's a coward, Lucy observed. He'll break under pressure if he thinks Thorn's going down anyway. Silas stood and walked to the window. Someone's coming. Riders from the south. Fiona joined him at the glass. 3 men on horseback approached at a steady pace. All wore the black suits favored by church officials. Thorn's men, Lucy breathed. They found us. Back room, Fiona ordered. Now. Lucy grabbed her documents while Silas moved toward the rear of the store, but it was too late. The riders had already reached the porch. Mrs. Redfeather, a voice called. We're looking for a runaway woman. Stolen property needs returning to its rightful owner. Fiona stepped onto her porch alone. Haven't seen any runaways. You boys want supplies, or are you just passing through? Don't play games. We know Mayweather comes here. Where is he? Silas visits every few months. Buys ammunition and coffee. Haven't seen him lately. Through the window, Lucy watched the lead rider dismount. His hand rested on his gun belt in clear threat. The preacher's offering $100 for information. That's good money for a half-breed trader. Fiona's voice turned cold. I think you should leave. We'll search the premises. Not without a warrant, you won't. The man stepped closer to Fiona. Warrant might not be necessary if you're harboring fugitives. Lucy made a decision that would change everything. She stepped onto the porch, Silas's rifle in her hands. "I'm not stolen property," she said calmly. "And I'm not going back." The lead rider's hand moved toward his gun when he saw Lucy on the porch. Silas appeared beside her, his own weapon ready. The odds had shifted in seconds. "Nobody needs to draw iron here," Fiona said calmly. "This is neutral ground." "That woman is stolen property," the rider declared. "She belongs to Preacher Thorne." "I belong to myself," Lucy replied. The rifle felt steady in her hands. Silas had taught her to shoot during her recovery. Her aim was true. The three riders exchanged glances. They had expected to find a cowering runaway, not an armed woman with dangerous allies. "The preacher wants his wife back," the second rider said. "He's willing to forgive her temporary madness." "Tell the preacher his wife died in the desert," Lucy said. "What stands here now is something different." The lead rider spat into the dust. "You can't run forever. Thorne's got friends in every county. Law enforcement, judges, federal marshals." "Does he now?" a new voice called from the road. Everyone turned to see a lone rider approaching. The man wore a federal marshal's badge and the confident bearing of someone comfortable with authority. He guided his horse to the trading post with unhurried precision. "Marshal Jasper Reed," the newcomer introduced himself. He studied the tense scene with experienced eyes. "Interesting gathering we have here." The lead rider straightened in his saddle. "Marshal, we're collecting stolen property for Preacher Thorne. Church business." "Church business involving drawn weapons?" Reed's voice carried skeptical authority. "That seems unusual." Lucy felt her heart hammer against her ribs. This was the moment everything changed. She could surrender and return to certain death, or trust a stranger wearing a badge. "I'm not stolen property, Marshal," she said clearly. "I'm a free woman with information about federal crimes." Reed dismounted slowly. His movements were deliberate and non-threatening, but his hand rested near his gun. "Federal crimes? That's a serious accusation, miss." Lucy looked at Silas. He gave her an almost imperceptible nod. They had planned for this possibility. "Preacher Thorne has been stealing funds donated to churches across 3 states, Lucy said. "I have documentation of every transaction." The lead rider laughed harshly. "Don't listen to her, Marshal. The woman's hysterical. She ran off with church money, and now she's making wild accusations." "If that's true, where's this stolen money?" Reed asked mildly. The rider's confidence faltered. "Hidden somewhere. She's clever despite her breeding." Reed's expression hardened at the racist comment. "I see. And you three are deputized law enforcement, I assume?" "We work for the church," the second rider said. "Church vigilantes, then. Armed and threatening citizens on public land." Reed's tone remained conversational, but his meaning was clear. Lucy seized the moment. "Marshal, I have documented evidence of bank fraud, forged land deeds, and theft of federal postal funds. Crimes that cross state lines and involve government officials." "That's a fascinating claim. Do you have this evidence with you?" Lucy nodded toward Fiona's trading post. "Everything's inside. 2 years' worth of records." Reed considered this information. During his investigation of suspicious banking activity, several sources had mentioned Preacher Thorne's name. The timing felt significant. "I'd like to examine these documents," he said finally. The lead rider stepped forward aggressively. "Marshal, this woman is a runaway wife. Her husband has legal rights." "Federal crimes supersede domestic disputes," Reed replied coldly. "Stand down." The 3 riders realized their authority had evaporated. A federal marshal outranked any local connections Thorne might have. They could only watch as Lucy led Reed into the trading post. Inside, Lucy spread her documents across Fiona's counter. Bank statements showing transferred funds, forged deeds with backdated signatures, letters detailing fraudulent transactions, her own careful records connecting every crime. Reed examined the papers with growing amazement. The scope of the corruption exceeded his worst suspicions. "How did you obtain these documents?" he asked. "I copied them from my husband's files," Lucy explained. "He thought I was illiterate. For 2 years, I documented every illegal transaction. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Lucy's expression hardened. To whom? The sheriff who takes bribes from Thorne? The local judge who owes his position to church donations? I tried to survive long enough to find someone who cared about justice. Reed studied the bank records again. These transactions involve federal postal accounts. That makes it my jurisdiction. There's more, Fiona interjected. She pulled out a map marked with colored pins. Every family that lost property to Thorne's schemes. 15 properties stolen through forged documentation. The Torres family, Reed said, recognizing one name. They filed a complaint about fraudulent land sales. I couldn't prove anything at the time. Now you can, Lucy said simply. Reed looked out the window where Thorne's men waited impatiently. Their horses stamped and snorted in the afternoon heat. I need witnesses, he said. People willing to testify publicly about these crimes. We can provide them, Fiona promised. The victims are scattered, but they'll come if they know justice is possible. It won't be easy, Reed warned. Thorne has powerful friends, political connections. This investigation will attract dangerous attention. Lucy met his gaze steadily. Marshall, I've lived with dangerous attention for 2 years. The difference is that now I'm fighting back. Reed made his decision. I'm placing you under federal protection as a key witness. Anyone who tries to harm you answers to the United States government. Through the window, they watched Thorne's riders argue among themselves. Their simple collection mission had become a federal investigation. Everything had changed. What happens now? Silas asked. Reed gathered Lucy's documents into a leather portfolio. Now we build a case that can't be ignored or bought off. We're going to bring down everyone involved in this conspiracy. Lucy felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time since her escape, she wasn't running anymore. Marshal Reed stepped onto the trading post porch where Thorne's men waited. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dusty ground. His federal badge caught the light like a warning. Gentlemen, you're dismissed, Reed announced. This matter falls under federal jurisdiction now. The lead rider's face reddened. Marshal, that woman stole church property. Preacher Thorne has legal rights as her husband. Any legal claims can be filed through proper channels. For now, she's under federal protection as a material witness. Witness to what? Reed's smile held no warmth. That information is classified pending investigation. The 3 riders realized their mission had failed completely. They mounted their horses with obvious reluctance. The preacher won't like this interference, the lead rider warned. The preacher's preferences don't concern the federal government. After Thorne's men disappeared down the dusty road, Reed returned inside. Lucy sat at Fiona's table, organizing documents into precise stacks. Her methodical approach impressed him. How long before Thorne learns what happened here? Reed asked. His men will report back within hours, Fiona replied. He'll know you have the documents by sunset. Good. Let him worry for a change. Reed studied Lucy's evidence again. The financial records painted a clear picture of systematic theft spanning multiple states. Bank fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy. The charges would carry serious federal penalties. I need to contact other victims, Reed said. Build testimony to support these documents. I have names and locations, Lucy offered. She opened her journal to a detailed list. 43 families affected by various schemes. Most lost everything. Over the next 3 days, Reed worked methodically through Lucy's list. The Torres family had kept their original property deed, proving the forgery. Widow Patterson had saved letters promising her donated money would build a school. The Jackson brothers had witnesses to their legitimate land purchase. Each conversation revealed the same pattern. Thorne would identify vulnerable targets, usually recent widows or families struggling financially. His schemes always involved legitimate-looking paperwork signed by corrupt officials. Morrison's the key, Reed told Lucy on the 4th morning. Without his forged documents, Thorne's entire operation collapses. Lucy had been thinking the same thing. Morrison's scared of Thorne, but he's more scared of prison. offer him immunity for testimony. Already planned on it. Reed rode to the county land office that afternoon. James Morrison looked up nervously when the federal marshal entered his cramped office. "Mr. Morrison, I believe you know why I'm here." Morrison's hands trembled as he set down his pen. "I don't know what you mean, Marshal." Reed placed one of Morrison's forged deeds on the desk. The signature was clearly visible. This document authorized the fraudulent transfer of the Torres property. "Your signature appears on 46 similar forgeries. I never signed that. Handwriting analysis says otherwise. So does your bank account, which shows regular deposits from Preacher Thorne's personal funds." Morrison stared at the evidence. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "What do you want from me?" "The truth, complete cooperation, testimony against everyone involved in this conspiracy." "Thorne will kill me if I talk. Thorne will be in federal prison. You can join him, or you can help us put him there. Your choice." Morrison looked at the forged deed again. His careful penmanship had doomed dozens of families. The weight of those crimes had been eating at his conscience for months. "I kept records," he said quietly. "Every document Thorne asked me to forge. Every payment he made. I was scared this day would come." Reed felt satisfaction flow through him. Morrison's cooperation would make the case airtight. "Where are these records?" "Hidden in my house. I can get them tonight." "Do it. And Morrison, if you run, I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. Federal warrants reach everywhere." That evening, Reed returned to Fiona's trading post with Morrison's confession and supporting documents. Lucy examined the additional evidence with professional thoroughness. "This proves everything," she said with growing excitement. "Every forged signature, every fraudulent transaction, every stolen property." Fiona had been busy contacting victims through her network of travelers and traders. "I've got 15 families willing to testify. They'll be here tomorrow." "What about Thorne?" Silas asked. "He must know what's happening by now." Reed nodded grimly. "My sources say he's gathering armed men, planning to disrupt any legal proceedings before they start." "Let him try," Lucy said with quiet determination. "I'm done being afraid of that man." The next morning brought a steady stream of wagons to the trading post. Families arrived from settlements across 3 counties. People who had lost everything to Thorne's schemes. People ready to seek justice. Samuel Torres embraced his wife when he saw his original property deed among Lucy's documents. "We can go home," he whispered. "We can finally go home." Widow Patterson wept when Reed showed her evidence of her stolen donation. "I wanted to build that school for my late husband. Thorne said it would honor his memory." "It will," Reed promised. "Every stolen dollar will be returned with interest." By noon, 23 families had gathered at the trading post. Their stories created a chorus of pain that demanded justice. Lucy felt their shared strength flowing through her like electricity. "Tomorrow we make this public," Reed announced to the assembled crowd. "Federal court opens in Millerville. Judge Harrison has clean hands and federal protection." Lucy looked around at the faces surrounding her. Farmers and shopkeepers, widows and young families, people who had suffered in silence for too long. "We're not victims anymore," she told them. "We're witnesses, and tomorrow the whole world listens." Thunder rumbled in the distance, promising rain, or perhaps promising something else entirely. The federal courthouse in Millerville had never seen such a crowd. Wagons filled the square as families arrived before dawn. 23 households carried their stories of loss and their hope for justice. Lucy wore the blue dress she had sewn at Fiona's trading post. The fabric felt like freedom against her skin. No restrictive collar. No hidden pockets weighted with secrets. Just simple cotton that moved with her body instead of against it. Marshal Reed positioned his men strategically around the courthouse. Federal deputies had arrived from 3 neighboring states. If Thorne planned violence, he would face overwhelming force. Judge Harrison reviewed the evidence in his chambers before court opened. Lucy's documents covered his desk in neat stacks: bank records, forged deeds, Morrison's confession, 2 years of meticulous record-keeping that painted an undeniable picture. "This is the most comprehensive fraud case I've seen in 20 years," Harrison told Reed privately. "How did one woman gather all this evidence? She's remarkable. Photographic memory for numbers and legal language. Her father trained her well." "And she lived with Thorne for 2 years while documenting his crimes?" Reed nodded. "Took incredible courage and incredible intelligence." The courthouse doors opened at 9 sharp. Families filed into the gallery with quiet dignity. They had dressed in their finest clothes to face their tormentor. Samuel Torres wore his father's Sunday suit. Widow Patterson carried her late husband's Bible. Thorne arrived with 6 armed men and an expensive lawyer from Kansas City. His black suit and silver cross projected religious authority. His cold eyes promised retribution for anyone who dared challenge him. He spotted Lucy immediately. She sat in the front row between Silas and Fiona, her spine straight and her gaze unwavering. The trembling woman who had fled in a white dress was gone completely. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Harrison." The proceedings began with Morrison's testimony. The land office clerk looked pale but determined as he described years of forging documents for Thorne's schemes. "He paid me $50 per signature," Morrison explained. "Told me it was God's work to redistribute land to more deserving families." "Did you believe him?" the prosecutor asked. "At first. But when I saw families losing their homes, I knew it was wrong. I kept records of everything in case this day came." Morrison's confession demolished any pretense of legitimacy around Thorne's operations. The forged signatures matched perfectly. The payment records were clear and damning. Thorne's lawyer objected repeatedly, but the evidence was overwhelming. Each document had been authenticated by federal experts, every signature analyzed by handwriting specialists. Samuel Torres testified next. His voice shook with emotion as he described losing his family's land to fraudulent papers. "We paid the proper fees, filed the correct forms. Then one day, Thorne's men said the land belonged to someone else. They had a deed dated 6 months before ours." "Did you recognize the signature on this false deed?" the prosecutor asked. "Now I do. It's Morrison's handwriting. But it wasn't Morrison who sold us the land originally." One by one, the victims told their stories. Widow Patterson's stolen donation, the Jackson brothers' forged sale, 15 families systematically cheated by the same methods. Lucy took the witness stand as the afternoon sun slanted through tall windows. The courtroom fell completely silent. Even Thorne's hired men leaned forward to hear her testimony. "State your name for the record." "Lucille Blake, formerly Lucy Thorne, though that marriage is now void due to fraud and coercion." Lucy's voice carried clearly to every corner of the courtroom. 2 years of fear had transformed into steady determination. "How did you obtain the evidence presented today?" "I copied documents from my husband's files over a period of 24 months. He believed I was illiterate, so he never suspected my activities." "What motivated you to gather this evidence?" Lucy looked directly at Thorne. "I watched innocent families lose everything they owned, children forced from their homes, widows left destitute. Someone had to document the truth." The prosecutor walked Lucy through each piece of evidence: bank transfers, forged signatures, fraudulent property sales. Her testimony was precise and devastating. "Did the defendant ever threaten you to prevent you from revealing these crimes?" "He threatened me regularly. Physical violence was common. He said wives who betrayed their husbands deserved biblical punishment." Thorne's lawyer cross-examined Lucy aggressively, trying to portray her as a vengeful wife seeking to destroy her husband. But Lucy's calm responses and documented evidence made his attack seem desperate. "You claim to have perfect recall of dates and numbers. Isn't it convenient that your memory supports these accusations?" Lucy opened her journal. "I don't rely on memory alone. Everything is recorded in my own handwriting with dates and witnesses when possible." The defense collapsed under the weight of evidence. Morrison's confession, combined with Lucy's documents and victim testimony, created an unbreakable case. Judge Harrison deliberated for less than an hour. When court reconvened, his expression was stern. "The evidence of systematic fraud is overwhelming and undeniable. Ezekiel Thorne, you are found guilty of federal banking fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. You are sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Families who had lost everything finally saw justice served. Thorne's hired men slipped away quietly, their employer's power broken forever. Furthermore, Judge Harrison continued, all fraudulent property transfers are hereby voided. Stolen funds will be returned with interest to the victims. Lucy felt Silas take her hand. Tears ran down her cheeks, but they were tears of relief and victory. Outside the courthouse, families celebrated in the town square. Samuel Torres lifted his children toward the sky. Widow Patterson hugged strangers with pure joy. "What happens now?" Fiona asked Lucy. Lucy looked at the blue dress that symbolized her chosen identity, at Silas, who had become her partner in every sense, at the families whose courage had made justice possible. "Now we build something better," she said. "A school where children learn that knowledge is power. A community where people protect each other instead of preying on the vulnerable." 3 months later, Lucy and Silas opened their first school in a building purchased with reward money from Thorne's conviction. The sign above the door read, "Blake Educational Institute. Knowledge is freedom." Lucy taught reading and arithmetic while Silas handled practical skills like farming and trade. Their first students included the Torres children and several young women seeking the education that society had denied them. On their wedding day, Lucy wore the blue dress she had sewn with her own hands. The ceremony was simple, conducted by Judge Harrison in the same courthouse where justice had prevailed. As they rode toward their new life together, snow began falling gently on the Missouri plains. Each flake represented a fresh start, a clean slate, a future they had chosen for themselves. The white dress of bondage had been burned long ago. The blue dress of freedom would last forever.